Java, Joe, the good stuff.
Do you like coffee?
I like coffee, Marshall. I think I enjoyed this episode the same way that you enjoyed our beer episodes.
Yeah, it was really fascinating. And I love St. Jacobs, the village. So talking to anybody who's doing a business down there is great.
So hi, I'm Sara Geidlinger.
And I'm Marshall Ward.
And today we have Edward Denyer.
Yes, of the EcoCafe. My wife and kids love the EcoCafe. They love their coffee, they love their biscotti, and they love their ice cream.
And I love coffee.
All right, well, let's talk to Edward about coffee then.
Here he is, Edward Denyer.
Welcome to Bonn Park.
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 Do you enjoy Bonn Park podcast?
If so, we would really appreciate it if you
Leave a review.
like, rate, subscribe, but most importantly,
Share directly from the platforms.
with your family and friends. That's the best way to get the word out to everybody, and more people will get to see our show that way. So click those like buttons and share our show. Thank you.
Thanks.
On with the show. This is it. Bonn Park is supported by Ginger Goat Hot Sauce. Made right here in Waterloo Region, Ginger Goat was conceived out of a passion for heat, flavor, and fun for your mouth. The original goat is a flavorful medley of smoked pineapple, ginger, and garlic with a solid headbutt of Carolina Reaper at the tail end. That last ingredient is what gives the original goat its deep, long-lasting heat, but the complex balance of flavor makes it approachable compared to other mouth melters. Ginger Goat is made with fresh, all-natural ingredients, so you can taste the difference. Ginger Goat packs a flavorful, peppery punch and adds a wave of fragrant aromas and zing to your favorite dishes, from wings, soup, and tacos to poutine, burgers, and chili. Find Ginger Goat Hot Sauce at Vincenzo's, Innocente Brewing, Coddle's Catch, Coffee and Tea, Crow's Foot Smokehouse, Graffiti Market, Jackass Brewing, Four Quarter Butcher Shop, Block 3 Brewing, and more. Ginger Goat is now featured on First We Feast's amazing show that Marshall and I are both obsessed with, Hot Ones. Check them out and follow their journey on social media. We are supported by Angry Bees Backyard Beekeepers. The name is Angry Bees, but the little queen bees of this company are as sweet as their honey. Angry Bees is owned and operated by two young women, Grace and Emma. These two preteens started Angry Bees after their father got bees to pollinate their very large vegetable garden. They sell delicious, raw, unadulterated honey and honeycomb. Their honey and honeycomb usually sells out within a week of harvest, and they harvest every few weeks in the summer. Each harvest tastes different depending on the flowers that are around during that time. The girls also sell all-natural 4-ingredient or less lip balms, lotion bars, glycerin soaps, and if you're looking for a fun activity, kits to make your own lip balms and soaps at home. Check out these young entrepreneurs and their hive of activity at angrybees.ca. Use the coupon code BONNPARK, all one word, for 10% off their lip balms and soaps. Thanks, Angry Bees. Bonn Park is supported by Mitchell's Soup Company. Eating right is so important, but it's not always easy when time and energy are running short. Mitchell's offers savory soups, chilies, Indian dal, and other amazing one-pot creations. Throw their mixes into a pot, dice and add some fresh ingredients, simmer, and serve. Mitchell's has a variety of aromatic and flavorful vegetarian and vegan options like their mulligatawny and Rockin' Moroccan soup. Find their products on local shelves at Vincenzo's, Top Market Family Farms, and select Sobeys stores. Check out their delicious mixes at mitchellsoupco.com and follow them on Instagram and Facebook. Don't stew about it. Try them out. You'll thank yourself on a future hectic day. We are supported by Market Road Antiques. Cool down on a hot summer's day at Market Road Antiques. More than 100 dealer booths cover the store's 20,000 square feet. It's a perfect way to take a socially distanced stroll through history. You'll find vintage furniture, clothing, records, games, relics, curiosities, and everything else you can imagine. Market Road Antiques is open from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. every day, all year, including Canada Day and most holidays. They are located in the St. Jacobs Market District at 845 Weber Street North in Waterloo. You can also check out their online store at stjacobsmarket.com/market-road-antiques.
background?
That is actually a special painting of coffee beans that was done for me by a gentleman who passed away last year, named Yves Lebrun. He was a French painter that lived in the village. That was in the cafe, but due to the fact that I changed the cafe to what it is today, there was no room for the painting. So the painting came home, and now it graces my dining room table.
Yeah, how great to have it in your home.
Yeah, so I was the winner of that of that ordeal. The cafe was the loser.
Edward Denyer, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me.
Right time, right place. We've had a few hiccups, but we're so happy to see you here, meeting you in person. I'm doing air quotes. Usually we start the podcast off by asking how one of us met our guest, because that's sort of been our thing so far, but it's becoming more and more common that we actually haven't met the guest before.
Right. I've spent lots of time in the EcoCafe, but I've never actually met Edward.
But that's interesting, Marshall, because you don't drink coffee.
That's right. But my wife sure does.
Yeah.
And she loves the EcoCafe.
Well, thank you.
How did
you guys find EcoCafe?
Well, I had heard about it from some of the businesses that it was coming. I remember like Toy Soup would tell me about this coffee place that was coming for, I think also Exclusive Elements would talk about it. And so I knew EcoCafe was coming to the village at some point. And then when they arrived, my wife was instantly hooked the moment she tried it. And we love everything about it, right down to the fact that it's very dog friendly.
Yeah, I don't know if you haven't had a chance to meet him, but when the whole movement started about this dog friendly thing, it came from the woman up the street who sells the dog treats, and so it was like, yeah, I'm in. And I had recently got a puppy, so this dates back to the beginning of my time in St. Jacobs, which is about almost 5 years ago. And I'm looking at the floor over there because my 90-pound lab was about 7 pounds when we moved into the back of the building. And he would spend all of his time at my feet sleeping. And now he's 90 pounds and still pretty much does the same thing. But since COVID, he stopped going to the office with me. He always went. So it's this weird interaction now that I'm a stranger to him. And he's like, when I come home, it's like he's never seen me before. But he spent 4 years under my desk and knew everyone in the cafe.
And I've seen some really big dog groups of people coming together. How does that even happen? Like I'm talking like a lot of dogs.
There's actually a woman who organizes, and I'm terrible with names, but
me too.
She's got a local company, and she specializes in teaching and educating on dog walking and behavioral patterns and how to manage dogs too for beginners and whatnot. So they started out and it was originally like 5 people, then 10, now 30, 40, and they have these organized walks. And one of the things that they're doing is, and particularly when we are open fully, they bring in dogs about 5 at a time and wait in line. And that way the dogs learn how to interact with humans and how they're supposed to behave in that setting. And so it's really good training for them, and it's really good training for patrons, and it's good training all around, and it's a really interesting way. So we've become really friendly with her, and that was the whole idea of having these signs put up around town that state that we are dog friendly.
And it's incredibly entertaining when there's like 12 of them on a warm summer day. It's really fun to watch.
What amazes me is how well they behave, because that's where my dog Rollo doesn't fit into that crowd. And when they come in, if he happens to be there, he's like the one that'll go out and cause a ruckus. He'll jump on other dogs. He has no manners whatsoever. It's like, oh no, Rollo, you got to stay in the back.
Wait, Rollo, that's the name of the dog in Outlander. Is there any connection there?
Oh, not Outlander, but it did have several connections. It's a pretty comprehensive name. It's I'm from Colombia, and the capital city of Colombia is Bogota, and the very conservative, old school people were known as Rolos. So that was one kind of, it kind of came in 3. So that was one concept that kind of fit the bill. We were watching Vikings at the time, and the brother's name was Rollo, and he turned out very much to be a Viking. So that one worked out. And then he's also a chocolate lab, so the Rollo candy bar. So it all kind of fit together, and it was a multi-team approach from home. So my wife, my son, and I each had our input, and we're like, that's the one. We all have a reason.
I only know that Bogota is the capital because I've seen Narcos. Does anybody else watch that?
Oh, nice.
Some intense stuff.
I've watched all the episodes. There's an anecdote to that too. There's a lot of crazy things that have happened in my life, but when I first moved to Colombia back in '94, was just after they put down Escobar. And I had just moved into Cali. And then shortly thereafter, Cali was a booming city. And so when Escobar went down, what they called the Bloque de Búsqueda, which was the search group that was sponsored by the Americans, had moved into the Cali area to look for that group, for the Rodriguez brothers. But they hadn't quite moved in yet, and Cali was a happening place. It was like the Wild West, and clubs and everything was insane. But I actually met one of their hardcore lieutenants at a St. Patrick's Day party in a bar full with a bunch of people. And I just ended up sitting at a table with some people, and there was an interruption in the night, and like it was like the parting of the Red Seas, and these people came in, and these guys like, dressed in full leather, and the people that we were speaking to were these two ladies, and they were told that they had to leave, that they had been summoned. And so the two women got up, and I was talking with the owner of the bar. That's the only reason I was there. He was a British guy. And so it was the American, the British, and these two women that he was talking to. And so then the guy in the leather came over to me, and we started chatting, and I thought he was on a Harley because of the way he was dressed. So I was giving him some lip about that. And he's like, no, I don't have a Harley. The import licenses weren't available at that time in Colombia for Harley Davidson. So he had a regular rice burner, and I was making fun of him. And so we had this long conversation and got to be friends over like a 10-minute span with this guy. And everyone's looking at me like I'm insane. And I have no idea. Like I'm completely alien to what's happening. And then he leaves. The bar goes back to normal. Everyone's loud again. And I go back to the people that I was sitting with, and they're like, do you know who that was? And I'm like, I have no idea. And then they told me that he was one of the head, I don't know what you'd call him, one of the head bad guys, henchmen or whatever. And for the next couple of months, I'd be out in a club, and he'd see me, and he'd be like, hey, amigo. And he'd send me a bottle of booze over to the group I was with. And people were like, how do you know that person?
You're like, I don't want this connection, but I kind of do.
It's a long story. Well, it was innocent enough to me, so it didn't really bother me. It was kind of just one of those serendipity things.
That's what I was going to say. I love the serendipity nature of this story, because you're having a St. Patrick's Day party at a bar in Colombia, and all of these
drinking green beer with a bunch of people. There was like a team from Florida that was installing the software at the bank I worked in, and we just happened to be in the right place at the right time. But my life is pretty much made up of those moments. Oddly enough, my staff, they're humored by my many stories of things that have happened over the years.
Edward, how do the mainlanders see San Andres? I spent a week in San Andres with my wife. Is it not a destination if you live in Colombia you would go to, even though politically it's part of Colombia?
It is a destination, or always was, and it's known as that Caribbean flavored place. I actually never went to San Andres when I was there. I did spend a lot of time in Barranquilla and in Cartagena, but I never actually made it to the island. I was on some of the smaller islands closer to shore, but it's a wonderful place, and most Colombians do go there to vacation because it's their unofficial part of the Caribbean.
I think you can drive the perimeter of it in like 45 minutes or something. It's really it's a very long island. Yeah.
So tell us, we were talking before we started, tell us about this painting behind you.
That painting was commissioned, or I commissioned it from a gentleman by the name of Yves Laurent. Yves Laurent was he was a quasi-famous artist who lived in the village of St. Jacobs. He had a long, drawn-out history. He was originally from France, from the south of France, and he did a lot of painting. And he had a gallery position in the village for a long time. Was friends of the Chance family, and so they had a gallery for him, and they kind of kept an eye out for him. But this guy goes way back. He used to do, in his younger years, he spent a lot of time in Florida, and he used to build these giant caricature heads of people that they'd walk in the parades and stuff. So I've seen pictures of Yves with, like Michael Jackson when he was a kid kind of thing. So Yves, unfortunately, he got old, and he got ill, and he suffered from pancreatic cancer. So his last few years, he kind of withered away, but he was still a good friend, and he knew what was coming, and he was aware of it, but he was a great friend to the end. When I first met him and he had just shut down the gallery, I asked him, because I was moving into the back of the mill, and his paintings were decorating the stuff. And I was like, Yves, I'll take care of your paintings, and if you want, I'll sell them, and I'll give you any money that people give me. And so he loved the idea. We took care of his paintings, and I actually ended up selling 4 or 5 of them over the next 3-4 years. And he graced me with all of his paintings that I get to choose when we moved into the cafe in the front. So there was a very colorful wall, which was all his paintings. And in all of that, he said, I'm going to paint you something someday. And I told him I wanted some coffee beans, and that's how I ended up with it. And it has graced the wall of the cafe up until, about a year ago. And when COVID hit and we closed the cafe down, then there was no point in leaving a very, it's unique and it's special and it's very special to me. And I just didn't want it. We had to move things around, and ended up that space was more useful as shelving than it was as a painting spot. So I brought it home, and now it graces my dining room table. And I don't think it'll ever leave here now.
Absolutely gorgeous.
No, thank you. Yeah, I mean, it is very colorful and bright.
So let's talk about the location, because you just mentioned the mill, you mentioned the painting, you mentioned the village of St. Jacob. So let's talk about your location. You've got a gorgeous spot inside the mill, right in the heart of St. Jacob's.
Yeah, so this goes back, you run across paths and crossroads in your life, and it was 2015, and I was kind of down in the dumps about coffee business and what I was doing and where we were. I had had several locations in different places. I had one in the Kitchener Market for years and had sold that, but we had basically, at that point in time, we were just a little warehouse that was doing office coffee, back end kind of thing. But it was stagnant, and I just didn't know what to do with the business, and I was ready to walk away. And in one of those moments that you're ready to give up is when I get a phone call from a friend who owned a business called, you might remember the name, Kiju Juices.
Mm-hmm, yep.
So the guy that owned that at the time called me and had some crazy idea about coffee and wanted to come visit me. And so I was like, sure. And he came down and talked to me. He's like, this would be a really good fit. You should open a cafe in St. Jacobs. And I hadn't been to St. Jacobs in years. And I was like, what are you talking about? Ended up having a second meeting about the coffee thing in his office, met Marcus Shantz, who at the time was the managing partner or director, whatever you want to call him, of Mercedes Corporation, who owned most of the infrastructure in the village, and they owned the mill building. So Marcus and I got to talking, and I had met him before years back. We had thought about doing something at the outlet mall, but that didn't work out. And he's like, look, I launched this new idea, this new concept on how to build a community or rebuild this community. And one of the things that would be a really nice fit would be a coffee shop. And I was like, but Marcus, I'm a roastery. So we worked on it for a while. It took almost 6-7 months of back and forth and to and fro, and we came up with a concept. But the problem was that the location that I really wanted, which is where we are today, there was something else there. So, and it was a kind of this back and forth. And finally one day I said, Marcus, I'm just going to move. Give me a temporary space. And that's how we figured out that the back of the mill was empty and we could turn that into a roastery. So we started with a roasting operation. There was another crisis moment, had to jettison a business partner, and that until that didn't occur, then we didn't open the cafe, but it culminated in about 7 months later, and we opened the cafe in the back of the mill. So it was kind of just a walkthrough, and no one knew we were there, and it was a perfect way to start something that was, again, a new venture. And I remember it was the time when they were rebuilding all the roads in the village, and everybody was up in arms about having all the roads blocked off. But what had happened was that everybody got directed down Front Street across the door of our new cafe. And we put signs up and said, new cafe. And after the 10th, 12th time that people drove by, they're like, what is this about? And that's how we started building a community-based cafe. And so we were in the back for almost 2 years, but we built a local thriving, business of local community people. So it wasn't just tourism. There was really no tourism that year because of the construction, yada, yada. So we kind of got our feet wet. And I really, for me, it was clear that to build a business in a village like that, you had to have the community on board. And that's your day-to-day business. If you do things properly, you gear it to be able to withstand the tourism factor and to address that, to service them, to provide for them, but you build it around community. And we did, and it worked, and it was amazing. And then when we finally moved to the front, the tourism aspect became all that more prevalent. People got to, we were front and center now. We were on that corner, the quintessential, iconic corner of the village where you've got the view of the silos and this old building, and you can see all the way down the street because there's actually a kink in the road right there. So there's a really good viewing angle to see the whole village. So anyway, it worked out. We moved to the front once the people that were there were gone. And then from there, it's just grown year over year over year. now we run into, our new friend that we all talk about all the time, which is COVID. And all I can say is what we built in the community was amazing. We've had an amazing season. We are an essential business because we're a manufacturer of food, so we never had to close the doors. We've serviced every day since it started, and our community has stood behind us, in more ways than I can say. And it's super proud to be part of what we are and to have that kind of backing, because that's what really shows you that it's important to build those around you. So that's kind of in a quick, not so quick manner. There's another piece of this. There's another piece of the pie that kind of tangles in.
Give us that pie. What's that pie?
And it was back the day kind of when we were opening the cafe. We were in the back, and I remember walking outside, and I met Craig from Exclusive for the first time, and he told me about this, that they were going to start this BIA thing, and that I should be a part of it. And I was like, I don't even know what a BIA is. And he's like, it's all right. You'd be a good fit, so on and so forth. I'm like, sure.
Was Craig wearing an amazing shirt?
Of course, with a rolled up sleeves that are a different texture and color, and he's like all dapper and anyway. So Craig said you should do this, and I said sure. And so when one day he came over and he brought me an application, he's like, you got to send this into the township. All right, did that. Then they, we had to go to. I remember we got selected as members of this new group, and I did it just to network, to get to know who was in town and what was happening around me and who the people that made decisions were. Was kind of my take on the whole thing. I knew Jenny Shantz by that point; she was on the board as well. So anyway, there was a bunch of people that penciled their names in. Then we went to council, and then they kind of rubber stamped it. Oh, you guys showed up? Sure, you can be on the BIA.
Somebody cares.
BIA board. And so we signed up and everything. And then we went to our first board meeting, and I don't know, my phone must have rang at the moment or something, but it was like, whoever wants to be chair, step forward, and everyone took a step back, and I was the only one standing there. And so they're like, oh, you should be the chair. And I was like, are you kidding? I don't even know what we're doing here. But in the end, I said, look, I don't mind. I'm a daring person. I don't mind being involved, and I don't mind leading this thing. I don't know what I'm doing. I have no experience. So hopefully there's no expectations. And if everyone's okay with that, then I'm on board. That was 5 years ago now, and I've been the chair ever since. And so we've done great things, and we've built a community and continue to do so. And there's been lots of change and lots of opportunity and lots of insight. And we have a bunch of programs that we're trying to put together, as well as other things that we've achieved. So it's been amazing. And it's a great way to build around the people that are around you. So like there was my little cafe that became kind of central to many things. And then the BIA position, a lot of people come to talk to me or need information. I'm always around because of the nature of the business. So it's worked out quite well.
And I think it's so critically important now. I don't have the same type of work, and I don't know what that's like to run a cafe or be on the BIA, but I assume that it's incredibly important to be part of the conversation when you're trying to run a business in that space.
Absolutely. And it gives you insight not only into what's happening now, but what's coming down the road. And I think that's where a lot of times as business, and especially small business, we get disconnected because of the urgency of the now and all the multitasking. So there's a lot of gaps in information, and there's gaps in understanding. And so although you put in a bunch of extra time, you definitely become part of the knowledge base. You become a sounding board for others. You become a collector of knowledge. You become a messenger as well. So you find out more and more information that's valid and pertinent to everybody else. And then you learn from the township and how politics work and how civic government works and how things get accomplished. But you also get to plan, and you get to look at the future and say, someday we want to do these kind of things. We want to have this kind of community that we live in. We want to offer these types of services beyond what we started with. And so that's that planning process. It's slow and it's tedious, but it gives you a sense of achievement over time. So like we've entered 3 years ago now, we entered a program with the University of Waterloo's tourism department. And it's really it's really a community, a place building exercise, but it's getting all the stakeholders of the community involved and getting their opinion and getting their say so that you can build something that's cohesive for not only the residents, but the visitors as well. You want to have an insight from both sides. But how do you do that? Well, I don't know how to do that. I don't have any expertise in that. So how do you do it? Well, you go find the university. We have wonderful universities that are just a couple kilometers down the road. Well, go talk to those experts. And it hit home for them because it's also the ability to reshape a community in their backyard. And so they don't get those chances very often. So they were eager. And now we're 3 years into it. We've done a couple surveys. There's a big thing coming up, hopefully end of this year, if not early next year, where now you get the communities involved in these small groups to really define what those changes will be. So like I said, it's slow, it's tedious, but ideally, when we get to the 5 years down the road, we'll have built something that was really a grassroots concept. So yeah, lots of fun.
When I think of something like Sparkles, the event that's usually held in November to kick off the holiday season, if the weather cooperates, that can be a magical experience. That's as close as you get to Christmas magic around here. But you have to get everybody on board, I guess, and some of the businesses do it really, really well. I guess with each year, you just add a few things, just to make it that much more special. Is that how you've been doing it?
Yeah, most definitely. That's how you approach it. The big transition is when you have a Mercedes corporation that has an engine that they built over 30 years of hard work in terms of marketing, communications, and the ability to move people. And they had the integration of not only the village, but also the market. So they had a big draw, but they also had a big budget. And so they could sprinkle their dollars in many areas where we don't even have access to. So they could do press, they could do paper, they could push into Toronto, they could push beyond. They were part of tourism organizations. So there was a lot of back end things that they were able to do that we can't do today. So we had to kind of take what existed, which had been a great success, and it built organically over 20 years when they kind of exited stage right and we came in, and you try to say, all right, well, now with our limited budget, how do we approach this and make it better? So it's not easy. And I mean, this year threw us for a loop because we went right into shutdown as we were just launching, and we'd already reimagined how it would be in a non-contact environment. But nonetheless, it did kind of go south. And we hope that in the future we'll be able to redo it in a better way. But it is, you start sprinkling new things, you put in new lights. We're incorporating, the lighting of the tree. And so there's this giant tree that had always been dark. And so we were able to illuminate it and put some other illumination. So through beautification and good ideas, you can start to build events around it, and you get community stakeholders to be involved in the events. So then you get, the Optimist Club jumps in and does the Santa, and they have a podium in an area for Santa to talk to kids. So now it makes more sense to bring children down into the event. So it's little things like that really make a big difference. And then people like you said, some people do it to the nines. The exclusives of the world have always been, the leaders of driving that kind of retail effort. And for retailers, as you said, it's been, that was their bonanza. That made their year every year. So you want to continue to promote and create for those who really need it. Though the demographic of the village is changing, and the types of businesses that you see have become maybe less retail focused, and you're seeing a lot more experiential type things. But that's also the way tourism has gone. Ever since SARS, now, like, we think of SARS as this thing that happened that never was going to happen again. Well, it changed tourism. And now, this SARS-2 is now redefining what tourism will be. We'll have to figure out a way. Exactly. You were telling us earlier,
I think before we started there, about how you were just getting going with the reopen in the fall last year. So tell us a little bit about that experience. You shut down in March, or you didn't actually shut down, because you can keep roasting and.
Right. We closed the doors to the public in March, and it was one of those, all right, no one can come in. Now what are we going to do? Well, there's a window over there. Does it open? And so it's a 100-something-year-old building. Took a putty knife and started cutting away at the window. And sure enough, I got this giant window to open. I'm like, all right, we're in. So we slid the window up and started taking people's orders just like nothing had changed. And we still had the cafe there, so we could make whatever we wanted to. And at first, we had a piece of plexiglass, and we'd take an order and slide the thing out, put the plexiglass back, and you learn over time, and we got a little better at it. But then we opened the door in the summer months, and we had plexiglass as well. But now we could take orders on one side and put product out in the other. So we never stopped serving anything that we did, but we just never let the public back in. We stayed in that mode. There was lots of opportunity to the way legislation changed and what they did to have patios. So we were able to create an outdoor space, collaborated with the landlord and took some of the parking spots in the front of the building and created this, what I called the village backyard. So my whole take on it was, it's not just an EcoCafe, seating area. It's that iconic corner. Let's create this. For me, it was that vision of the European corner plaza where it doesn't matter if you're getting a coffee or food or you're just taking a rest. Yeah, you have this ability to sit on this perch where you have visibility. And we put music out there, and it was right by the bathrooms, and it kind of worked out very well. And so for the summer, it completely flew, and we didn't have to worry about people coming inside. We milked it all the way into late fall, but now the writing's on the wall. It's going to get cold, and how are we going to manage this in the winter? So as my staff still operated in that manner, my business partner and I kind of brainstormed and said, how do we do this? And I said, I have this idea of building an alleyway inside the cafe. He's like, what? What are you talking about? I'm like, I want to make it look like it's an alley, like you came to the back somehow of the building and you can still order through the window, but you can't come inside. So he's like, okay, let's build an alley. And that's what we did. And so we ended up gathering some panels that were the backdrop of a stage, and we used those as our main wall. There's some brick inside the building, and then I bought fake brick panels and added to it, and literally turned this little hallway that I built inside of my own space to look like an alley. Hung lights and made the window, and we completely vapor barriered the space out, so we had no contact in our airspace to the customers coming in. By doing that, then we were safe in our own little bubble, but we could still provide services. And then people like, how are you going to put food out and stuff? So I came up with this crazy idea to emulate like the drop boxes in the old banks. I don't know if you remember when you used to have to go to the bank and pull the drop box open and throw the money in. So I built those, but the product comes out of the wall for people to grab. So little things like that. So I thought, let's make it fun. It's built on experiential again. You go back to that word, is if people find a safe experience that they enjoy, they'll come back, and they will continue to do so. And I don't know. Like I feel in a lot of ways bad because many people have had a really, really hard go of this year. For us, it was about opportunity. It was about change. It was about changing changing the storyline. We had an online store for sales, and that went skyrocketed. People all of a sudden couldn't get coffee in the office, so they needed a source. So just getting that knowledge out to people that we could do this for them and deliver, boom. So then that started working really well. Then they come in and pick up and see the environment that we created that's safe, and they're like, oh my God, we have a place to go. St. Jacobs per se became this little 5-minute away from Waterloo area where you could be outside and you could walk. It didn't matter how cold it was. Now being outside was the thing to do, and you could do it in the village without feeling claustrophobic or having too many people around. So it's like this perfect storm. We pivoted, the famous word that everyone's used this year, but we pivoted at the right time with the right changes, and it was extremely successful. In the winter, it worked just as well. And we went all through the winter, and people love it. They love what we've done. We had, I call them the COVID police, but the Ministry of Labor was in last week doing their blitz in this area, inspecting all the businesses. And they came in and they were like, wow, this is actually great. Like, we've not seen anybody do anything like this. They couldn't believe it. So it wasn't hard to do. It wasn't complicated. It was just having the right idea, having the right gumption to think it would work. My staff thought I was insane. They're like, this guy's lost his mind. He doesn't know what he's doing. But it worked out really well.
Edward, I think it's really neat that EcoCafe is right across the street from Block 3 Brewing. How similar or how different are those two businesses when you think of EcoCafe and Block 3 Brewing?
I think they're similar in many ways. It's a craft production business. We're both producers of a product. So beyond the sit and stay or the cafe kind of experience of that, patronage of something to drink, we obviously, our customers are shorter in terms of a stay, because you don't drink 17 coffees and then get really happy at the end of them. You'd be bouncing off the wall. So the interaction's a little bit shorter on the cafe side. For their patrons, it's a little longer. But in essence, we're producers. So in the back end of what we do is we're actually producing output that goes out the back door for delivery. So that's how we sustain both of our businesses. And then the front patronage, the people that come in and interact with us, our faithful customers, that's another great side to the business. But one doesn't work without the other. On the days where it's raining or snowing and there's not a lot of people around, you're still producing. So that's kind of how we're very similar in how it works and how it works for other people that are small like that. You have to have that component. But likewise, they're a community center. It's the place to meet, and it's the place to, we may be busier in the mornings. They're usually busy in the afternoon. So we actually complement each other quite well. They're really nice people. We've had an opportunity to do collaborations of all sorts. A lot of them, people don't see them, but we do collaborate in many ways in the back end too. I mean, we put out beer together, but they produce cold brew for us at times when our volume, we just can't maintain capacity. We've shared staff, we've shared infrastructure, we've shared furniture, like you name it, we've done it. They're really good friends, and it's a benefit that we both have that same kind of style of business, that you have to be creative, you have to be engaging, and you have to be opportunists. And so we both do the same kind of things.
I think that creativity piece is so important. Like versatility, I think we're learning for small business specifically has been the key. The famous word pivot that you use. Let's go back a few steps and let's talk about the heart of what you do.
I've definitely had the opportunity to go in country to see the whole operation from beginning to end. But the essence of the business really is that we're a coffee roastery. So what I get to do is I get to pick coffee beans from all over the world. We have origins any given time. We have 30, 40 different origins. We combine them, blend them, roast them. There's a lot of detail in the roasting of coffee, and the beauty of that is that it goes to people's taste buds. So it's very specific and to that person. So there's variety is unlimited, and you can roast coffee 10 different ways. Anyway, so we have a lot of different types of coffees. We have a lot of different ways to roast it. What we are is a roasting engine in the back. So what we do is produce smell, and we do that all day long because we're roasting in small batches. Now, that's counterproductive to quality in some ways because it has to be the same every time. So we use technology to help us. We catalog every roast profile that we do. We use roasting curves and computers to be able to match that specific coffee to that roast profile, to that flavor. From there, we have different types of roasts of different coffees that we will blend together to make different blends. And that's all specific to the flavor profile of that blend. So you want to have fruitiness, then you would add this coffee. You want to add acidity, you would add that coffee. You want it to have body, you'd roast it darker. You don't want any bitterness, you flatten out that curve at the end. We specialize in a type of coffee that no one else has in this area, which are pea berries. So it's just a different type of coffee. It's a byproduct of the process. They're very small beans that initially were sorted out as defects. But when you have enough of them together, they're dense, they're small, and they need to be roasted in a different way in order to coax the flavors out of them. But we figured that out a long time ago. So now we always hunting for more of these pea berries, and more countries are producing them. So originally it was only Tanzania, then it was Tanzania and Brazil. Now we get Costa Rica, and then some others are dabbling in there. So now we can do blends that are made out of pea berries. But they have to be roasted. You can't roast them the same way as you would another coffee from that same region, or it won't taste right. They're underdeveloped when that happens.
Oh, okay. I was going to ask if it was about the size. Like, when you bake cookies, they all have to be the same size, but this is different. It's at a different stage too.
It's both sides because of they're smaller, but it's the density is higher. So if you roasted those little beans in with the big ones, they would burn on the outside, but they wouldn't roast in the center because the heat's being, induced too rapidly. So you slow the roasting profile down. You can do that through airflow. You can do that through temperature or time. And then you adjust those parameters so that it's slower in the cooking process, and you can then get a homogeneous roast throughout the density of the bean, which will coax the proper flavors. So it's a lot of that type of thing. And it's a lot of testing. And so we have all these small tools. We do sample roasting. So we get to cup coffees, and we got proficient at cupping by understanding that that's how you can truly taste what the coffee has. So when we were open to the public, we had a cupping room, and we had a cupping session every Wednesday and invited anybody that was interested. It cost nothing to sit in and partake. Now, we also had an opportunity to teach people what cupping was about. So you could come in with a group or some friends, and we would do kind of an education concept and teach people what they were doing. On Wednesdays, if you signed up, it was, you just sit over there and do what everyone else is doing. And so you get a lot of first timers, and they're like, what are you doing? And you're sticking coffee, spoons in coffee and slurping it and making noises and spitting it out. And they were like, oh my God. But that we would do it every week to keep practice, but to also really understand what the product is that you're producing. And by staff knowing what it is that they're tasting, they can better educate the customers. For me, this business was based on education. What I found in earlier iterations of EcoCafe is that the partners that I had or the situations that we were in, it was always about pumping out volume, but never really explaining why. And I always wanted to have a place where, we never push the message unless you want it. So if you just walk in and you want a cup of coffee, that's all you have to ask for, and we'll get it for you. Sometimes we'll say, would you like anything in it? And if they want to add milk, cream, no problem. We'll do that as well. But it's not, you don't have to learn a language to be able to order. You don't have to speak a certain, lexicon to get, you don't need the lingo to, or not enough milk or less foam. Like, you can just speak in English and we'll get you what you want. But if you want to go into a level of detail and complexity as to how long the bloom should take in that coffee, or how many grams is there in that shot of espresso, or what's the extraction ratio that you prefer, like, those are all things that we're schooled in and that we're knowledgeable about, and we can have that conversation. But it shouldn't be you shouldn't impose that on the customer. It's what the customer wants.
I catch a glimpse once in a while of somebody talking about those kind of things. I think it must be a lot like wine, in that way.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Well, it's funny because you're exactly right. There's something called the flavor wheel. So in coffee, there's this defined wheel. It's a circle, basically an image of a circle, and it kind of, in the center, there's less things. Than as you go outer into the outer reaches, there's like different layers, and each layer splits up into more. What it is defining flavors, good and bad. And that's where you get the things like acidity, body, those kinds of things. But then it gets into the nuance of stone fruit and, grassy or whatever, molasses, all these descriptive terms. But all of that was stolen from the wine industry. Years ago, they were like, wow, these people know how to describe flavor. Well, let's just use the same terminology and put it in a wheel. And that's how the coffee, or, the specialty coffee flavor wheel was defined by the Specialty Coffee Association. And so the basis was from the wine industry, who had done it for years and years and centuries for that matter.
Just like with wines, like, not every coffee is going to satisfy every palate, right? Everyone has their certain tastes. It's not a one size fits all.
It's true. And I think absolutely not. And it's not it's almost like a one person fits one thing. What I try to ask people is, what is it that you like? And you have to kind of translate what their descriptions are to what your offering is. So, some people are like, oh, I want something strong. Well, that doesn't really mean anything to me, because that could be how much coffee I put in, how dark I roasted it, those kinds of things. So you have to kind of ask some pertinent questions. And so, what color is it that you like your coffee to be? Do you drink it with milk and sugar? Do you find, an aftertaste is bothersome? And then when they answer those questions, now if they like an aftertaste, then they'll like a darker roast. If they, have, stomach problems, they want a low acidity coffee. And so when we talk about acidity, people think it's flavor. It's really actually the acidic content of the coffee. Some regions and some beans will have a lower acidic content, which won't upset your stomach. So if you know that information from the person, then you can guide them into something that they're going to be more comfortable in. Now, also what I try to do specifically is guide them into general areas and have them try something. Mm-hmm. So if they're not sure, you want to kind of get them in a broader spectrum, maybe maybe even like our blends, because you kind of, in a blend, you're using different origins to create a specific taste. So now we know what that taste is. It's a nutty thing. It's it has nuttiness and has some chocolatey tones, maybe caramelish. So now they're talking a language that they're understanding, or they're listening to a language that they're understanding. So you put them in something like that and say, try that, and then let me know what you think next time. And they'll come back and like, oh, that was good, but I could use something a little more, or I didn't really like it so bright. I would prefer. And then that's like, all right, well, how about this single origin? It has similar qualities because it was in that blend, but it won't have the fruitiness to it. And then you just put them into a Guatemala or a Tanzania or whatever the case may be in their defined profile, which really is only over a conversation that you find out.
Where's your favorite bean from?
What I drink at home every day, Colombia.
Yep, Colombia. I figured.
What's happened though is my taste profile has changed with age. I used to like, way back when, I liked a darker roast. Like we classify our roasts into 5 categories. So it's a medium, which is our lightest, then the medium dark, a premium dark, and French. French is really dark, blackish beans. I call it burnt, but it's what some people enjoy that. So you make it for them. It's not really burnt. It's just really dark. The premium darks are a shade between the dark and that, and that you find people that like dark, but not so much. So then we found this premium dark, and no one uses that term in the industry. It was just trying to keep it simple for people. Dark is kind of our middle range. So most people, don't realize that we only have 2 that are lighter than the medium dark and medium. When I first started in this, I used to drink dark roast all the time. Then over 5 years or so, I changed to medium dark because it was more chocolatey, and now I really like a medium roast, and I find that that's really the sweet spot for me. Now it's funny because I say that's what I drink at home. I don't drink coffee like a coffee snob at home. For me, my morning coffee is about a routine. I don't have any coffee makers at home. I gave them all away years ago. I have a pour over basket without a paper filters, and I pour my water through my coffee every morning. So it's like this ritual but it's a ritual that has milk and that has some sugar in it. And that's my wake up. That's the first, I have 2 cups of that every morning. That's kind of how I embrace the start of every day. At work, I usually will drink pour overs with nothing in them because that's when I get to taste the coffee. Right. The morning one's about the routine, about having that, my veins fill up with, caffeine and
the good
and be
stuff.
Ready to be ready to face the day. But later it's about tasting and about, the actual nuance of each coffee and learning. And it's funny because a lot of people don't realize that you can really tell the taste of coffee as it's cooling down. So when you first start a pour over, it's really hot, and you'll feel certain things, or there's certain tastes that you will sense at that temperature. But as it cools down, you start to taste a lot of the complexities of what's in there, and they're masked by the heat. You can't sense them. They burn out your taste buds, and you don't feel them. So you have to let it sit and cool, and slowly sip it as it's cooling down, and it completely changes from beginning to end. It's a really interesting phenomenon that it takes time. And so when we first opened the cafe, I was all about the pour over, and we provided a specific service of pour overs because I really wanted people to breathe, 2, sit down and relax, then take your time to really savor what's in front of you. It's good. And so if you go slow, then you'll be able to tell that. And so by the time you're done, it's a 5-7 minute process, and you had a bunch of different flavors and an experience, and you were able to shut out the rest of the world. Then you can go out the door and go back at it, and you'll be fine. So that was kind of the whole concept.
I think this comparison will make sense. So in recent years, I've discovered artisanal cheeses, and I'm from places like La Fromagerie in Waterloo now.
Yeah.
And I absolutely love them to a point where I now see them as something very different than cheese, a lot of cheese you would buy in a supermarket. When it comes to coffee, once somebody has immersed themselves in the coffee world, are they kind of not into drive-through coffee anymore? Or are they like, I like that too?
It is the same way, and we do spoil it for some people. And by the same token, we feel that we're also inviting them to continue to be able to do that. They just have to do it through us if they really want that experience. But I also, I'm all about people come to my place and try something and then go to somewhere else and try theirs. And if it's good, that's great. I mean, there's only so much coffee in the world, and there's only so many, nth degrees of roasting it. The philosophy behind cooking of beans is very defined. So if you do it, and one of the things I learned early on in the industry is there's many ways to ruin. And so if you can get all the way through the end without ruining it, then it's going to be really good, because if the origin was good, it'll shine. But any step of the way can actually ruin it. So if you can consistently provide that end result that is good, it's well worth it for people. A lot of people over the past are like, but it never tastes as good as it does here at home. Well, how did you brew it? What water did you have? What filtration did you use? What temperature? There's all these variables that we try to consistently keep in our process so that it's measurable. That at home, we don't do that. We don't have the right equipment or the time or the method.
Hey all, thanks for meeting us in Bonn Park. Please like, rate, and subscribe to our podcast on the platform that you're listening to. And follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Bonn Park Podcast. Original music by Alan Lung.